Welcome to the Brand Together podcast. Join host Brett Ryan to dive deep and go behind the scenes of successful brand partnerships. Featuring pros from every industry and vertical, from mega brands to startups and everything in between. The Brand Together podcast is essential listening for anyone interested in learning more about brand partnerships. Are you ready? Let's dive into part 2 of a 2-part episode.
That sounds like a scam. Do you want my social and my bank information next? But I decided to just ask, what's this about? And I actually met with the lady in person. Her name's Terry, and she's a real human, and they really do a golf scramble every year. And they donate money to the nonprofits, a new nonprofit every year. What was really interesting is that she just wanted to write us a check from their raffle. Just give us the money they raised there. She said, you don't have to do anything else. Like, she didn't want to pressure us. But that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. If she wants us to be there, we'll be there. We'll tell our story. And we did. So we went to the golf scramble. We stood at hole 1 and spoke to everyone as they came through. We built all of these relationships, and it was so fun. And we told our story. So even though they had fewer items in their raffle that year, they raised more than they regularly do. And it's because of the partnership, the opportunity for them to organize their event and to bring us in to tell our story. So we have clear lanes in the partnership, clear expectations. I'm not planning anything, and they don't have to understand our brand in a way that pressures them to have all the right language and all these things, so that we both can be strong in our brands and our lanes. But then the outcome is really strong because in the end, we're standing next to each other, making something amazing happen. And it wasn't just the money that was donated that's incredible. It's the relationships that were built. That's what it's all about. And that led to more doors opening. Now, we had a while back partnership that wasn't fun. Thought it was going to be really fun. It was a younger company. They had their values, but they didn't have the structure built out in their organization. They didn't have clear expectations, and we didn't make clear expectations on this partnership. So instead of having 2 separate lanes, it was like this. Like, they wanted us to do a bunch of stuff, and we were like, actually, this is your event, so maybe just stay in your lane. And it became overwhelming, and it wasn't by nature of flaws, like character flaws. It is by nature of unclear expectations.
The positive example you gave, I think, provides perfect contrast, right? Where it's like, it makes that the example you gave where, hey, they don't have to understand our mission and have the perfect language and the perfect brand presentation. And we don't have to operationalize literally anything outside of our wheelhouse, right? Let them run their show kind of thing. That is a perfect example of organizations contributing according to their strengths. With partnerships, what you're really after are arrangements where both organizations can benefit from one another's strengths, because it allows you to sidestep having to build it all on your own. So I wrote a book on this, and I don't talk about it too much on the podcast. There's an example I have in my book about Xbox, a video game company from Xbox. They partnered with 7-Eleven one time to make special cups with special art from the video game and video game characters on it, right? And 7-Eleven does not want to invest all the resources to build their own video game studio and operationalize all of that. And so I suppose Microsoft could develop their own in-house Slurpee brand and go through the chemical development process and manufacturing of Slurpee juice. I don't even know what it's called, right? The actual consumable. They could go through, right? They could just throw money at the problem and develop that core competency. But what you really want to do is you want to borrow another organization's core competency so that you both get further down towards your missions, And what you're talking about is it's an operationalization of that principle. It's, what are you guys good at? We'll do what you're good at. We'll do what we're good at. Let's find the alignment. And that's how the partnership becomes successful. And in your negative example, even without too many specifics, it's if that's not happening, if you're listening to this and not watching it, the motion you made with your hands, you overlap them on top of one another to represent this idea of you're running into each other and over and under each other. And it's challenging when a business that wants to, the Dream Factory of Idaho they're not experts at running your business. They're experts at serving children and granting wishes to children with chronic conditions. They're not experts at running any given business, and vice versa. And so just recognizing that, I think, is the key. And I think that's useful because let me tell you, it's easy to get the streams crossed, right?
Yeah.
Here's a question. I want to ask this question because we have listeners from nonprofit brands that tune into the podcast. What advice would you give? Say, for example, pick a state in the United States that doesn't have a local Dream Factory chapter, and brand new baby bird director pops up and they're just getting started. What advice would you give to them about partnerships that you didn't understand maybe when you were first starting, that you understand now? What advice would you give them?
A lot. I think the biggest thing is you want to really make sure you know your organization. Make sure you have written down your core values and your actual mission, not just like we make dreams come true, but why we do it. And then the why layer beneath that. Because if you really understand those things in your heart and you're teaching them in your organization with all your volunteers, your staff, if everyone really internalizes those and is united on those, it's a lot easier to attract partnerships. Another thing is you don't need to pound down all the doors. Start with the ones you already are inside. So if I have a board member that owns a coaching business, for example, obviously we already have a foot in that door. We're in that house. So it's not hard to ask them to sponsor the gala in May. But if there's a wine shop that I drive by every day and I never go there, just because I'm familiar with it doesn't mean they know who we are. So starting a brand partnership means starting a relationship. Start with the ones you already have, cultivate more. As you bring in more volunteers, look at the relationships they already have and cultivate those. A brand partnership isn't about asking for something. That's not what a partnership is in any case. It's about that relationship and creating synergy between the organization so they can flourish together.
That makes sense. I wanted to go back to now, because a couple questions ago we talked about your favorite and least favorite partnership. What is your vision for future partnerships for the Dream Factory of Idaho?
I envision us attracting the right partnerships by cultivating the right relationships. I don't want to see my volunteers pouring themselves into door knocking. I can't say that I have a strong vision for exactly who we want to partner with because I don't know everyone in the valley. I just know that I want to attract the people that are ready for it. I wish I could just describe the perfect partnership, especially because we talked about niching down. There's a nonprofit locally that I could say specifically is called Raise for Rare, and they serve families whose kids are medically fragile with day-to-day type things like house cleaning or lawn care. They give the families access to group therapy and cafeteria cards for when they're in the hospital again. And they have parties for the families and even sibling support. Obviously, there's a ton of overlap. And when we're ready, I'd love to be at their events as the Dream Factory, inviting those kids to be served. One of my big picture, long-term, big, hairy, audacious goals is to have enough funding that when someone is ready for a dream come true, we can make it happen. Right now, we're at the stage of setting a vision and strategizing while operating. And it's much easier to have an impact when your structure is really clearly organized and your budget is strong enough. But the organization here in Idaho, we're still pretty young. So we're full of really big ideas. And I'm always surprised to see how many people are willing to jump on and do this.
Yeah.
Can I tell you about one of our board members?
Sure.
It's partnership related.
I'd love to hear.
So this goes along with attracting the right partners. So I'm posting on LinkedIn and I'm trying to share our story, share my story relating to it, because especially in a nonprofit, the founder has the brand. I'm the face of the Dream Factory of Idaho in the community. So I want to make sure I'm really getting that story out there. And as I'm doing this, I'm reaching out into businesses, business owners, especially on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I didn't know I would. But in this process, I get connected with somebody named Nick. And within 5 messages on LinkedIn, he says, come to my office today. Let's talk about this. He didn't want to just have a phone call. He wanted me to come in to his office. So I go to his headquarters. I bring the kids with me because why not? That's how we function. I go to his headquarters and we're talking about the organization. He's coaching me using his business strategies. And by the end of the conversation, he's saying, why haven't you asked me to be on your board yet? It sounds like you need me. And he's one of our strongest board members right now. And it all started because of storytelling and connecting.
It's evidence to me that you're doing some of the right things. Really, and I don't just want to pat you on the back and give you some platitude, but what a marketing leader that I really respect, I asked him a similar question, I asked him a question about, when do you know that your brand is ready to partner? And his answer was really insightful. He said, when other organizations approach you, having already done some of the mental homework of what a partnership might look like, that's evidence that you're headed in the right direction as a brand, right? Because that means that you've defined your own brand well enough and you're telling that story enough and clearly enough and consistently enough that people start to understand where they are in relation to your brand. And so they can come to you and say, hey, come to my office. We need to talk about this. Why haven't you asked me to be on the board? Because they already understand enough about you that they reach out and they get that ball rolling, right? And they start actively searching for fit or start actively thinking about maybe this is what a partnership looks like between us. So I think that's evidence that you're at the very least headed in the right direction. And you guys, I think you guys do a great job on LinkedIn, right? Some of the content I see, and no, that's a good thing. So
yeah, I think being transparent about where you are as a business and where you want to go really sets you up for attracting the right people.
Yeah, I agree. They can't find you if they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's that baseball movie. I don't even know if it's a baseball movie.
Field of Dreams.
They will come.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Can you talk to me a little bit about how has your investment in your own personal branding impacted the Dream Factory of Idaho? Can you talk a little bit about that?
That was a journey for me. I started off thinking I needed to be Katie, the CEO. The average CEO in America is like over 6 feet tall and in his 50s. Yes, it's a man, of course. I can't embody that. And the more I got out into developing my brand and practicing public speaking as a public figure for this organization, the more I realized I can embrace the feedback I'm getting. And the feedback I kept getting was inspirational, kind, compassionate, and warm. And I wouldn't think of those things in myself. I'm in a vacuum. Everybody's in themselves all the time. It's really hard to tell the message that we're conveying to the world. But if you don't know that message, then you can't control it. So, and going out and doing things like Toastmasters and asking for feedback on the message I'm sending out into the world, it helps me to understand how to use the ingredients in me to make my recipe for brand success. And my nickname, which you will find on LinkedIn is Katie the Lady. And it's not because I think I'm a lady. It's more of an irony, really, but it rhymes. So it sticks in your head, and that warmth that I embody and knowing the specific stories that I want to tell through my personal brand and at these events, that really strengthens what people see. It gives them consistency, and therefore it draws in the people that are ready to connect and serve. One of the big things that I've noticed from the beginning to now when it comes to niching down and in this brand business is that when you're comfortable in your personal brand, in your skin, and you're out trying to draw in customers, it's so much more natural. I can go into a networking meeting and say, I'm looking for people that do this, for businesses that have this. And then those things will come to me instead of me going around the room and asking every single person, how are you doing? Tell me about yourself. I want to do those types of things, but I can't just be spinning around in circles hoping to run into the right fit.
That makes sense. I love what you shared there. And really, it's about marketing as a discipline is essentially solving the problem of allocating a limited budget to unlimited opportunities. And you're talking about solving a resource allocation problem rather than approaching everyone in the room and doing 100 pitches individually. It sure would be nice if the ones who are a closer fit just came to you. And it certainly makes it easier from a resource allocation perspective. And so I love what you shared. Is there anything else you'd share with us about personal branding at all?
You have to know your own values. You have to know what you're sending out into the world. You need to be consistent with it. There's nothing to burn a bridge like out in the open hypocrisy, right? Gosh, I love talking about personal branding. Another really important part of personal branding, this is the answer to your question. With personal branding, your story becomes their story. So there's this bridge you're building by connecting yourself and the service that you give to other people. You're not just giving them your story, you're giving them their own story. And when they have their own story, then go out and do the marketing for you.
No, that's perfect. Katie, we are out of time, but I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. I'd love to have you back really soon because there's a lot of meat to these bones. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, we haven't had as many conversations with folks who are running nonprofits as I've hoped to have. And so your perspective is not only insightful, but I think it's refreshing for the listener audience. So yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brett.
One last thing before we go. Where can our audience find you?
I have LinkedIn, and we have the Dream Factory website, which is dreamfactoryinc.org. It's kind of like Monsters, Inc., but dreamfactoryinc.org.
Got it.
We have Instagram and Facebook also. It's the Dream Factory of Idaho. If you can't find it, get a hold of Brett and shake him till it comes out.
There you go. You reach out to me, I'll connect you. All right. Thanks again for joining us, Katie, and we hope to have you back soon.
This has been another episode of the Brand Together podcast with your host, Brett Ryan. Join us again next week for another deep dive into brand partnerships. And remember to subscribe to the Brand Together podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else podcasts are found.